So as I was placed over by the pit of fire, then I could see all the people. There were people inside the pit, screaming, people burning. I could see the outlines of people, their skeleton form that would just look like skeletons.
Don't let anybody ever tell you that hell is not real. The video that you're about to see is going to terrify you. Watch.
One of the things that I'm often asked is, who did you see in hell? Now, I know there are others who claim to have had a similar experience and mention specific people they saw in hell. Some say they saw children, and some say they encountered celebrities. Some also share that they observed Christians who didn't tithe, or women who wore jewelry or colored their hair. Well, I saw none of this. In fact, none of those claims could be true because none of them are biblically accurate. People go to hell only because they reject the saving name of Jesus Christ.
Much worse.
We went to a prayer meeting like we did every Sunday night, and we returned from the prayer meeting, went to bed like any other normal night, and at at 3 o'clock in the morning. I knew it was 3 o'clock. For some reason, I can't explain to you why I knew it was 3, but the Lord picked me up and took me out of my body and dropped me off in a prison cell in hell. There was no explanation at all until the return. I found myself in a prison cell, just like you would imagine a prison cell to be, with rough-hewn stone walls and bars on the doors. And it was light for only about a minute, so I could see to describe to you what I saw. And then it resumed its normal state of darkness. But the first thing I noticed in this cell was the heat, the tremendous heat. I wondered immediately, why am I alive in this heat? It was way far beyond the ability for my body to live, but yet I was alive. And it was terrible, horrible heat. I don't know what the temperature was, but it was way beyond. I should have died. I noticed that I was lying on the floor and I had absolutely no strength in my body, completely void of any kind of strength. I could barely move. I looked up and I saw these two creatures in the cell. There were two of these creatures. Now, I didn't know what they were at first, and because I went there as an unsaved person would be. The Lord withheld it from my mind that I was a Christian. He blocked it from my mind, which there's lots of scriptures, but just to give you three, the Lord can do anything, but to give you a scriptural reference, in 2 Kings 4:27 and Daniel 4:34 and I think Luke 18:34, it talks about where the Lord can hide something from someone's mind. Now, the reason He blocked it from my mind, see, if I would have been there as a Christian, then I would have had hope, and I would have been able to cry out and say, God's getting me out of here. Well, He wanted me to experience what they feel there, and that they'll never get out. They're hopelessly lost, and they'll never get out. You see, and that's what He wanted me to experience, so He blocked that from my mind. So I didn't know what these creatures were. I wasn't there as a Christian to observe, that's a fallen angel or a demon. I didn't realize what they were. They're just enormous creatures. I noticed, the size of this thing, first of all. And this might sound like a colorful exaggeration, but this one was about 13 feet tall. And to give you some scriptural basis for that again, in Genesis 6:4, it talks about where the sons of God came and had relations with women. Well, most of the commentators believe that the sons of God refers to the fallen angels. So the fallen angels came down, had relations with women, and produced giants in the earth in those days. And then in Deuteronomy 3:11 talks about the giant, one of his bedstead was made of iron and was 9 cubits in length. Now, cubit is 1.5 feet, so it's about 13.5 feet long for the bedstead of the giant. So the giants in the earth came as a result of fallen angels having relations with women. Okay, so fallen angels are in hell. That's what fallen angels or demons, call them what you want. There may be some differences, but that's too technical to get into. So this creature was about 13 feet tall. Okay, so you can look on the wall. The pastor had it drawn on the wall. That's how big 13 feet is. So to give you an idea, bring it into perspective, just gigantic thing. And it was all reptilish, scaly, bumps all over its body, really grotesque and just horrifying to look at. But again, maybe if we can show that picture, you'll get a better, if the pastor can show the picture on the wall here of what this one looked like. We're going to see a video in a little bit. We put together a 3-minute video, Mary Kay Baxter and myself, who was another lady that had experienced hell. And in the video, one of the clips came from Kenneth Hagin giving his testimony to Joel Osteen's church. They did a video, and he described the demon that he saw. Well, strangely enough, it was exactly like the one I saw. So I don't know how whoever drew it depicted it to be so exact, but this is exactly one of the ones I saw in hell. So it's from Kenneth Hagin's testimony, and that's where it came from. So I've been trying to show it to people to give them an idea.
Tell them what you told me, that when you first saw this video, it just blew you away. He said, I went back and forth and looked at it 20, 30 times. I said, I told my wife, I can't believe that image on that video is the exact demon that I saw. And you said...
Right, it was exactly. And it only shows them from about here up. I saw the whole body, so, this doesn't show the whole body, but I just was amazed. I kept playing it back thinking, how in the world they get it so exact? I wanted to contact Kenneth Hagin, but, I couldn't. So, anyway, I don't know how they got it so exact, but this really is a good representation of what they look like. Now, they're all different sizes, shapes or small ones, which I'll talk about, but this particular one is huge, and it's ferocious. It's not just that it's big, it's ferocious, and it hates you, and it's powerful, and it was pacing in this cell like a caged bull, and ready to pounce and tear me to shreds. Okay, so if you can imagine the most wild beast animal you can picture, well, this is far worse than that. So with the size and with its nature, it was terrifying. I was just absolutely terrified. Yeah, so its head, it's hard to tell, but its head is probably this wide. So it's just an enormous head with huge teeth. It had claws about a foot long. Its foot-long claws on it. It was totally out of proportion, no symmetry to it. You know, one ear big, one ear small, one arm long, one arm short, one foot big, one small. No symmetry to the just deformed, twisted, grotesque creature. And it paced around this cage, and it was conversing with another demon in the cage. The other one looked different than this. The other one had razor-sharp fins all over its body and was thinner. This one was real stout and powerful looking, real wide like that picture on the wall, real wide like that, and big. So you can imagine, look how small I am compared to that. Any of us would be small compared to that. But that's what they look like. It just helps having a visual, you know, so hard for me to describe what they look like. But anyway, as far as the stench from this thing was terrible. Absolutely the most foul, putrid smell you could ever imagine. But besides that, in hell, there's a smell of sulfur, burning sulfur, which you can't breathe. And, you know, if you've been to Hawaii, which I haven't, but they talk about if you go see the volcano, you can't go past a certain point because the fumes from the volcanic ash and so forth is from the sulfur, and it will kill you. It's toxic. Well, that's what you have to breathe in hell. It's toxic air. So you should die from breathing. But yet you keep living. And you don't want to breathe because you feel it's going to kill me. I'm going to die any second. But again, you keep on going. And besides that, there's not enough air to breathe. So you don't have enough air. It's not like you can take a breath, deep breath like here. It's hardly any air at all. So each breath I took, I had to breathe like this. It was like, just like that. Barely could get any. So you're going to die any second from not enough air. But you keep going. So another one of these things you have to endure in hell. You have to endure the like I said, the heat and the fear. You know, Psalm 73:18 talks about you cast them down into destruction where they're utterly consumed with terrors. And you are consumed with terrors. You know, lying on the floor, being helpless, I had no strength in my body. But even if I did, I couldn't have fought off that thing anyway. But still, you feel like you'd want to have some kind of strength, and you don't. You're void of all strength. And Isaiah 24:22, it says, they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison. So it talks about prison cells. Proverbs 7:27 talks about going down to hell to the chambers of death. And the word chamber means inner rooms. And the bars, Jonah 2:6 talks about the earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from corruption. And most of the commentators, the Tyndale Old Testament and the New International and some others, believe that Jonah did experience, she went to Sheol. He was right on the outside of hell. Or some believe he was inside the gate. So there is somebody in the Bible that did experience hell, Jonah. And he said in Jonah 2:2, in hell I cried out. So he's someone that experienced hell. And he talks about the bars of hell. And Job 17:16 talks about they shall go down to the bars of the pit. And it's talking about actual metal bars. So, you know, scriptures to support that. No strength is talked about. Isaiah 14:9 talks about hell from beneath is moved to meet thee at thy coming. They will say, art thou become weak as we? And the word weak is the same word in Judges 16:7 where Samson lost his strength when his hair was cut off. He became weak. And Psalms 88:4 talks about, I am counted with them that go down into the pit. I am as a man that has no strength. These creatures were blaspheming God. They were cursing God. And I understood what they were saying. I don't know what language it was, but I could understand them. And they had a hatred for God. And they turned their attention towards me and had that same hatred for me. And I wondered, what have I done to them? But they had this extreme hatred. And so that big one that you saw, picked me up and grabbed me and threw me into the wall. You know, like I weighed nothing. And I felt my bones break. And you have a body in hell. Matthew 10:28 says, fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And there's a lot of other scriptures I could give you. But anyway, I felt the bones break. I felt pain. But the pain was masked somehow. I knew it was blocked, that I didn't feel all of it. And God blocked most of the pain. He let me feel a little bit of the pain, just to be able to relate to people that you do feel pain in hell. It's not allegorical, metaphorical. It's real pain. And so I felt the bones break. I fell on the floor. And the other one with those razor sharp fins all over its body picked me up and grabbed me from behind like a rag doll. And it just dug its claws into my chest and just tore open my flesh. Ripped it right open. And I looked and I felt the pain again, and I noticed there was no blood or water. But, there's a lot of scriptures where there's no blood in hell and no water in hell. And my body was destroyed. My wife and I like to work out, take care of ourselves, and eat right. And, it didn't matter now. Body was just absolutely destroyed. But I wondered, why wasn't I dead? What's wrong with me? How come I can't die? But you can't. You keep surviving. Each one of these things you survive. The stench should have killed me. I couldn't believe how bad the smell was. I went to crawl out of the cell, and apparently they let me. About then it went dark. And so I believe the Lord's presence left, and it resumed its normal state. Because, without the Lord there, it would have been dark, totally dark, and I wouldn't have been able to see anything, so I couldn't describe it to you. So when I got out of the cell, it was absolutely pitch black, like a darkness which was beyond any darkness you could imagine. And I've been in some coal mines in Arizona and so forth, where it's way down deep dark. This was different than that. It was an evil presence about the darkness, an eeriness. Exodus 10:21 talks about a darkness which may be felt. You could feel the darkness, and it was evil. Again, enough to terrify you, and just the fear should kill you. But you keep living. I looked to the right, and I could see just a little bit, because there were flames shooting high in the sky that was about 10 miles away from me. I knew it was 10 miles away. I don't know how I knew, but again, there's certain things you know in hell. Your senses are keener. You have a little better understanding than you would here. And even Erwin Lutzer, one of the scholars of today, who wrote a book, 1 Minute After You Die, he even said those in Sheol have heightened perceptions and a better understanding. So I knew that the flames were about 10 miles away, and it lit up the skyline just a little bit. Not like it would be here, because it was a mile across. This pit of fire was 1 mile across, so that's a lot of fire. It would light up the whole area if it was here on earth. But down deep in the earth, the light did not travel. So I could just see barely, and it was all desolate, barren wasteland. Nothing. No greenery, not one green thing. Just rock, barren, desolate. Isaiah 59:10 talks about we are in desolate places as dead men. And so one of these creatures grabbed me and dragged me back into the cell. And this one began to crush my head, and it just crushed my head flat. Now, how would I live with my head flat? I don't know. I don't know if it resumed or what, but I felt my head get crushed. And again, I know the pain was masked, it was blocked. It would have been way worse than what I felt, but the Lord allowed me to feel some of it. There was 2 more that walked into the cell. I didn't see them because it was dark, but I just knew there were 2 more. And they each grabbed an arm and a leg, and were going to tear my legs and arms off. And I just thought, I can't take this. I can't take this. And right then, something grabbed me and pulled me out of the cell and placed me over next to that pit of fire that I saw. And so I was so glad to be rescued out of that pit. For a second, I had some peace. And it was the Lord, of course, that took me out of there, but I didn't know that then. So as I was placed over by the pit of fire, then I could see all the people. There were people inside the pit, screaming, people burning. And I could see the outlines of people, their skeleton form. It would just look like skeletons. I couldn't tell if there was any flesh on the people, just like skeleton forms. And they were all adult size in skeleton forms. I didn't see that there were any small frames of people, so I believe there were no children there. And also the screams were all screams of adults. You could tell the difference in the kids' scream. And it was deafening. The screams were so loud because there's millions of people there. So, have you ever heard one person scream? How irritating that can be, someone scream in terror? Okay, well, imagine millions and millions of people screaming in terror. It's terrible. And It was so deafening, I wanted to stop, but you can't get away from the screams and sounds. And I looked over and I saw the people clawing their way out, trying to get out of the cell, or out of the pit. And they couldn't get out. There were demons lying all around it, shoving them back in. But they really didn't have the strength to get out anyway. They were just trying to make a feeble attempt at getting out of there. And they were being shoved back in. I didn't want to be thrown into the fire. It was hot already, but I didn't want to be thrown in the fire. That's got to be the worst thing. There's lots of scripture on the fire and hell. Okay, now some say it's metaphorical, it's not real flames. But that's not true. It's real flames, it's real fire, just like you could imagine. I think it's even hotter than fire would be here. Everything's amplified there. But just to give you a few scriptures, Psalms 140:10 says, "Let burning coals fall upon them. Let them be cast into the fire, into deep pits." Matthew 13:49 says, "The angels shall sever the wicked from the just and cast them into a furnace of fire." Psalm 11:6 talks about, "Upon the wicked he will rain fire and brimstone and a burning tempest." So there is real fire in hell. And another reason I believe it's real fire is, in Luke 16, where the rich man said, "I'm tormented in this flame, and send Lazarus to dip his finger in water to cool my tongue." Well, if it was metaphorical flames, water would not suffice, right? He wanted water to cool it, just would help with the flames. And in Revelation 9:2, it talks about in the tribulation time where the bottomless pit is open, and it says the smoke of the pit ascends up, and it darkened the sky, and the sun became dark from the smoke of the pit. Well, if you had to have a real fire to produce smoke to darken the sky. So it's real fire. Spurgeon, one of the great leaders of the past, said, "There is a real fire in hell, as truly as you now have a real body, a fire exactly like that which we have on the earth." That's in the book Hell Under Fire, which is a really credible book written by 9 scholars. So the fire burning these people, they were screaming. I mean, imagine burning. You know how terrible fire is. I mean, look at the Twin Towers. How the people that were faced with the heat, people chose to jump rather than some of the people, right? We saw them jump. And because they said the temperature was about 2,000 degrees, that temperature, and that would incinerate them in about 15 seconds. And rather than face that 15 seconds, they chose to jump. And that's got to be horrendous, to look out that tall building and jump. You've got to be pretty serious to jump out of that. But rather than face the heat. And scientists say that the center of the earth is 12,000 degrees. That's what scientists say. So you can imagine the temperature you have to endure for eternity. You have no purpose, absolutely no purpose there. It's a useless wasting away. You have nothing to do. You have nothing. And Ecclesiastes 9:10 talks about no work, no device, no wisdom, no knowledge in Sheol. It's just useless wasting away there. And it's a land of forgetfulness. Psalms 88:12 talks about. You have no rest in hell. Now, you need to sleep in hell. Just like you need to sleep here, you don't ever get to go to sleep. Imagine what it's like not to sleep just 1 or 2 nights. Well, you never get to sleep again. So you're kept up. And how your body would feel after just a few nights, you're going to die. Well, there you never get sleep. And Revelation 14:9 or 14:11 talks about, "And the smoke of their torment ascends up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night." Now, it's talking about the rest from the torments, but also you don't have any physical rest. You see, in Psalms 127:2, God says He gives His beloved sleep. You see, so sleep He is given to the beloved, and you're not His beloved there. You see, every good and perfect gift comes from above. It says in James 1:17. So you see, hell is absent of God's goodness. You don't get to breathe. You don't get to have fresh air. You don't get to have sunshine. You don't get any fellowship with anybody. You never get to be with people again. You're isolated from people. Even though there's people in that pit of fire, they're separated. There's no conversation. You'll never get to be with a person, never have a conversation again. All these things are blessings from God. You see, God gives all these good things that we enjoy, but when you remove God from the equation, which hell is, then there's no good thing in hell. All these things, you don't sleep, you don't eat. The smells are terrible, foul odors. And like I said, no air to breathe. And Isaiah 42:5 says, the Lord gives breath to the people upon the earth. These people are under the earth. And that's another thing. I knew I was down deep in the earth. And there's 49 scriptures that talk about where hell is right now. Okay, it's down deep in the earth. Now later, after Judgment Day, it says death and hell will be delivered up and cast into the lake of fire. But that's after Judgment Day. In Revelation 20:14 talks about. So, but right now, hell is down deep in the earth. And there's a lot of scriptures for that. Remember when Jesus descended into the lower parts of the earth and hell was separated by a gulf fixed? Talked about in Luke 16. Ezekiel 26:20 talks about where hell is, and Numbers 16:32. So many scriptures I could point out that show you where hell is, but I understood that I was down deep in the earth, about 3,700 miles deep. And somehow I knew it was 3,700 miles down. So we know that the diameter is 8,000 miles, so that 4,000 is the radius, so I was close to the center of the earth. Like that pit of fire, it was about a mile across, and that's a big pit of fire. But there were individual pits of fire all around that big pit, where people were in their own individual pits also. There are other prison cells in hell. Some people are in prison cells, pits of fire, a lake of fire, this big huge lake of fire. And so there's all different places in hell. And there's all different levels of torment. And not all has the same torment or punishment. And there's a lot of scriptures of that. Remember where Matthew 23:14 talks about, therefore you shall receive the greater damnation, inferring there's a lesser damnation. Or it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah than for that city, inferring there's a less tolerable. A servant beaten with many stripes or beaten with few. Hebrews 10:28 talks about how much sorer punishment suppose you shall you receive. And so there's a sorer punishment. You make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. There's a lot of scriptures on the different levels of torment, but none of them are good. Okay, all of them are bad, every single level. There isn't any nice spot in hell. When I was down there, I thought about my wife. And I thought about I could never get to her again. I'd never get out. She'd never know where I was at. She never could find me. I couldn't get out. And that thought to me was really tormenting. To live with that for eternity, that she would never know where I was, and I would never get to her. She would never know what happened to me. That was horrifying to me. And I've always told my wife I'd get to her no matter what happens. If we're in an earthquake and we're separated that day, I'll get to her. I'll find her. And I couldn't get to her. So another thing that you just have to endure there is being separated from your loved ones. I thought about people up on the earth. I understood that there was a whole world going on up here, but that the people up here don't realize there's a whole world going on down there. Most people don't realize that there's millions of people down there that used to live up here on the surface. And they're all there, tormented. And they used to live here and live their life just like you and I, walking the earth, doing their thing, and enjoying their families. And now they're eternally lost in this place, and they'll never see their families. They'll never see anyone. I thought about, just for a second, I had flashbacks of I wanted to eat a good meal, have a drop of water. Water was so precious. I just wanted one drop, like the rich man said. You know, one drop would have been so special. And so I really value water highly now. My wife and I both, I carry water everywhere we go. And I have a bar at home. I collect water from around the world. So if you don't like water, you want to learn to love it. Because, when my wife poured it for me, when we returned, she poured me a glass of water. And it just all of a sudden, it was life in a glass. See, water represents life. It talks about that in Revelation 21. And it just was amazing to me to look at water and think, there's life in this. And there's no life in hell. So there's no water in hell. Zechariah 9:11 talks about thy prisoners in the pit where there is no water. And a lot of other scriptures. But water is so precious now. Matter of fact, I'm going to have a drink. So. I thought about everybody up on the earth, and there's no way to get out of this place. Absolutely no way out. You couldn't get out no matter what, but I could understand eternity there. Like here, you can't quite grasp eternity. We think of time as having a beginning and an end, right? It's got to end somewhere. We think of timeline. But in your spirit body, you can understand eternity. So I could grasp that I was going to be there forever, and I would never, ever get out. So, the torments are terrible that you have to endure. But the worst part is that you'll never get out. You'll suffer for eternity. And I think I would like to show, before I get to the good part of meeting Jesus, I'd like you guys to see this little 3-minute video we put together. Mary Kay Baxter and myself put together a little short video. And her and I watched different Hollywood movies to try to find something that looked realistic about hell, something that would look real. And so it's as good as it can get for Hollywood, but it's far short of what it really was like. she saw a woman running. It was a spirit of fear chasing this woman for eternity through hell. I don't know how the woman had strength to run, because I didn't have any strength, but there's a lot of things I didn't see in hell. Hell's a big place, and the Lord only showed me part of it. So if she saw that, you'll see again where Kenneth Hagin's testimony, where he's being drawn up to the gates, and you'll see that creature that I saw. And then you'll see people hung on crosses, and Mary Kay talked about that, where people that mocked the cross, that are hung on crosses for eternity. So that's part of what you'll see. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of a visual. It's just 3 minutes long, and then we'll get back to the good part about Jesus.
Reality is much, much worse.